Hello humans, I am Tommy of InCamera, and before we get started today, we just want to say a really huge thank you. We've been just kind of blown away by the response to the work that we're putting out since our launch, 6 months ago. The comments have been extraordinarily positive, and as a creator, it's wonderful to hear people really appreciating what we're doing, and we love that you're all getting a real benefit out of it and learning some stuff. There's been some amazing comments and there's been some really great suggestions on the kind of content that you would all like to see. We also recognize that you don't all have a big studio and cameras and big lights. So this is going to be the first in a series of videos where we dip into JP's box of tricks and my bag of little tricks, where we show you some of the more accessible bits of kit and gadgets that we think can really elevate your work. Little things that you can just bring along with you to a shoot that might just get you out of a scrape. Now, before we crack on, I think it's really important at this stage that we address the giant plaguey elephant in the room, which is, of course, to recognize that at this point we are now shooting content during this horrendous pandemic that we are all suffering through. Since this happened, of course, running a studio has been the hardest thing that we've ever had to deal with professionally, both as a production company and as a studio space for hire. As soon as it happened, the first thing that we did was to go through how we run this space, how people work in here, and how we can make it safe, both for us and for production companies that are hiring the space and coming in here to work. There's a body called APA who govern practices in production in the UK. There will be similar organisations around the world that do much the same. Now, the APA put out their guidelines in how people can work safely whilst continuing to do their jobs and support their families. We adhere to those guidelines strictly, both when we're doing in-camera shoots and when we have production companies coming in here and working with us too. And if you're in production, I imagine you've probably already looked into this, but it's really important that you familiarise yourself with current working practices. We're posting a copy of the APA guidelines. Now, those are specific to the UK, and I would imagine it is much the same around the world. Have a look at those so you know the kind of practices that we're incorporating into our shoots. Just basic safety things like keeping distance where possible, keeping the room ventilated, sanitizing our hands regularly. And in fact, we're being tested every week in the studio space. There's really only about 3 of us in the building for the most part. And since the first lockdown easing, we have had a lot of shoots in here and we have adhered to those guidelines, and we have not had one case come from this building. So if you have any queries about the guidelines that we follow here in the studio and in the UK, check out the guidelines in the description below. Right, that's the horror show out the way. Let's have some fun. JP.
Hello.
What's in the box?
Box of tricks.
The box of tricks.
Whoa.
Oh yeah. Ah.
It's a smoke machine.
Amazing. This is intriguing. What is this little guy? This kind of looks like a vape.
Yes, well, it's a MICROFOGGER. So
Yes.
it's based on vape technology, developed by a guy called Ivan from vozentech.com. What it does is it basically gives you a miniaturized version of a smoke machine that can be triggered manually on the unit itself or through a wireless remote control, which I'll find the dongle here.
It's like a little key fob.
And what this does is it opens up the options of rigging small-scale smoke effects in either props or costumes or set pieces, and really utilize the ability of concealment.
Yeah.
Something very small.
Yeah, the form factor. I mean, it's really dinky for
Yeah.
what I know to have a quite significant output given the size.
Yeah, yeah. It comes into its own when you just need that little bit of smoke, a little bit of atmosphere, or if you're doing miniature work and you're only working on a small scale to start with. And all in all, it's a very good solution to certain effects.
Yeah.
the film that we were both involved with that required some smoke effects. Before I knew about these products, I did a bit of R&D myself to develop a hidden smoke machine under a costume. And it became very apparent very soon that by the time I got all the components and all the logistics sorted with the electronics, it actually worked out cheaper to buy this unit.
Right. Yeah, because we used this on that Burning Man sequence because it begins with the man kind of essentially smoking like crazy before
Spontaneously combusting.
Combusts.
Yes.
And that was outside.
Yeah.
The amount that was coming out
Yeah.
of the costume was impressive,
It
given
was.
that it was coming out of this little thing.
Yeah, it works really well. And one of the advantages of this is that you can run an extension connector here and run it through a hose, which is exactly what we did.
Yeah.
So this was actually concealed within the costume of the stuntman with a tube running underneath his jacket and down his sleeve and to come out from his cuffs. And that's, again, where something like this small and this compact can come into its own, really, and be triggered remotely.
So what kind of distance can you get if you're...
With the wireless remote control in an ideal line of sight range, you get about 25 meters.
Right.
Depending on the use or the kind of implementation of the smoke effect, sometimes it might be more desirable to have it hardwired, like triggered by a cable.
Right.
Just more reliability. So if you're wanting to trigger the unit over a certain longer range than 25 meters, or
if you're in a really elaborate setup that you can't do that many times.
Yes.
You've got an A-lister on set or something like that. The last thing you want is for it to not work.
Yes, so if it was a cosplay or it was a costume or it was a prop that an actor or stunt person was controlling themselves effectively, they could trigger it themselves and it wouldn't have to rely on a remote.
For this unit, the Mark II,
Yes.
give us some just like basic pros and cons.
Well, the pros are definitely the size and the weight.
Yeah.
Considering it's got a fan inside and circuitry to control flow and amount of vapor to come out, it's pretty nice and compact. And the flexibility in rigging it and, like I said, adapting it through tubing and using it for lots of different uses. I'd say those are the pros.
Yes. All right, let's be honest here. Cons?
The cons, I think, are probably battery.
Yeah.
So the internal battery, which has to cram inside here and provide the unit with a lot of power, actually, to heat the coil.
Yeah.
It does shut down after a certain amount of output to protect the coil.
Sure.
The charge time of the actual unit, to reach full charge, it takes 6 hours.
Okay, got to come prepared.
Which is considerable.
Yeah.
But if you go prepared, you can kind of minimize the battery usage. You do get about 20 minutes of smoke time.
Okay, which doesn't sound like a lot for a 6-hour charge, but
No.
if you think about holding that down solidly for 20 minutes, that's actually quite a lot.
Yes, and because this falls into its own for a localized effect, a one-off effect, or a spot effect, I guess you could call it. So whether it be a malfunctioning tape recorder or you're doing a miniature shoot and you only need to ever concentrate on a very local area to just add a tiny bit of smoke because you're working very close up.
Yeah, you try and fire our cult into a miniature and it's going to look like Dresden.
Yeah, for a long time. But it's such a simple adaptation of an existing kind of vape technology, so you can control not only the speed but the thickness of the smoke that comes out. The thing to bear in mind is this is, $160. The closest thing to this in the miniature smoke machine world, if you like.
Okay, there's a world. Miniature smoke machine.
We're talking thousands.
Oh, wow.
We're talking 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times the price of this. So
I love it. This is such a great thing, and I think there's lots of kind of fun gags that you could use it for, and also you pointed out a really nifty thing of when you're shooting, like photographers, if they're shooting food, or even videographers, if they're shooting food that's been sat there for a while, you could feed in a little tube under there and just give it a little bit of steam.
Yeah, sure. I mean, because it is more of a vapor type of smoke, it's a very kind of thin viscosity of smoke.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can look like steam, it can look like vapor, it can work really well for things like that. Where the units like this come into their own is for just that small amount of smoke that you need, or that small amount of steam or vapor, and they're quite good for playing pranks on people as well.
Yeah.
Pretending that a cupboard's on fire, or a drawer's on fire or what have you.
Now, this is literally something that you could just have with you in your kit bag.
Yeah.
And if you're on set and you're shooting something, you just think, oh, just a little bit of atmosphere would be good here. But, you know, it wasn't necessarily considered initially. You know, no one's brought a smoke machine to set. You can just be like, there you go, done.
Yeah, I mean, exactly that. I think it falls into that category, that sweet spot sometimes where you're either doing on-set effects or you're a DP or you know, you're somehow involved in the lighting of or creation of a mood or a scene.
Yeah.
And you just want that little extra touch of atmosphere, and you don't have to go through the whole process of using a larger smoke machine or hazer, the time that takes to warm up and produce just the right density of haze or smoke. With something like this, you can, you know, you can start firing and wafting it around and just getting that ideal level of atmosphere in your shot.
Magic. So good. Amazing, man. Thank you for bringing this to our attention.
You're welcome.
We'll stick a link below in the description. They're very reasonably priced, I believe. What are we talking for this little guy?
So they are $140 without the remote, $160 with.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, Ivan. So this is Mark II.
This is Mark II.
And I believe there's another iteration of the way.
There's a 2.1.
2.1.
So this is technically the outdated model.
Yep.
The new version has addressed the battery issue.
Great.
So it still takes a long time to charge, but the battery itself, the circuitry behind the charging circuit, if you like, is a lot more efficient.
Right, okay.
So it's going to hold its charge for longer in between and generally give you a bit more reliability in terms of battery life. The great thing about Ivan and this product is that he has so much documentation to do with, you know, servicing and kind of user notes on kind of how to get the best performance. The thing to bear in mind with this kind of high-powered vape machine is that they draw actually quite a lot of power.
Yes.
A heck of a lot of power. So to keep a battery that has any substantial kind of longevity in terms of being able to supply a unit like this for any long duration, you're only going to bulk out the form factor even more. So it's that balance between having something that you can put in your pocket, that you can use for the odd occasional shot. It does the job really well, and you're not constantly using it throughout the day, basically.
Yeah.
So Ivan's very kindly donated a 2.1 MICROFOGGER to us, and what we'll be doing with that is battle testing it.
Yeah.
So we'll be using that on future episodes, and we'll come back and report back on that version, which is the current version.
Yeah. Well, thank you, JP.
Thank you.
For revealing what's in your box of tricks today. Thank you, Ivan, for creating this wonderful bit of kit at an incredibly affordable price, I think, by comparison.
Yes.
There we go. Okay, so that's a pretty groovy little first episode for our little box of tricks series. Awesome. Lots more of those coming. We've got some wicked little gadgets to show you. Let us know if you enjoyed this. Stick it in the comments if you're liking it. Don't forget to subscribe. We're running a Patreon now. If you want to help support what we're doing, we would much appreciate it. Until next time.